What have we got here?
Okay, today we are looking at Jack Kirby with Cecil.
You can never get
Castellucci.
tired of seeing a table full of Jack Kirby's.
It's quite joyous.
Yeah, it's really beautiful.
It makes me happy. Does this not make you super happy?
It really does make me very happy.
Everything makes me happy.
And I love the word, the words that they have on the covers. You know, when it's like the, what do you call it, balloon cover? Or,
Yeah, like the caption
Yeah, the
on the cover.
caption,
We don't do
yeah.
that anymore.
No, it's very, yeah, and I love it.
I think we should bring it back.
It's funny you mentioned that actually, because I just had an email exchange with our editor Christy Quinn at DC, because we're doing a new Gotham Academy series.
Oh, right.
And I submitted a cover a while back, but then she emailed last night saying, guys, there's a mandate now at DC that we have to have text on the covers.
Oh, really?
I don't know when that happened. Anyway, so we had to go back and forth and figure out some like Kirby-esque blurbs to put on.
That's some Warner Brothers executive looking at these comics from the 60s going, I think this should be on all covers from now on.
But I do think that, like, in a crowded, comic book store, like, knowing sort of some kind of like, elevator pitch of what the book is going to be, like, kind of can draw you in. Because people, as much as they're drawn into images, I think words were naturally sort of attracted to, like, well, what does that say?
I also think the magic of comics is when there's words involved with the image, the person has to engage more and they spend more time with it.
Yeah.
As an artist myself, like, I love putting my artwork down and for people to sit there and hopefully look at it like a Picasso all day. But that's not the truth. They fly by in a minute, or like less than a minute, seconds. So if there's writing, they actually have to spend time.
Yeah, well, like, it's like, look, dead man, look out for, right? You're like, wait, what's the image? What's the, it's like an immediate.
What's happening to dead man?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's I think about that a lot now, about that engagement, especially now that you see more what they call, I guess, like naked covers on the stands, which are just like, they don't even put any trade dress.
Yeah.
It's just like a variant cover that's just an image with no title or anything. It's like, it's more rare to see this. I also look at these a lot now and think about just how much space was taken up by the logos at the time. Now we have much smaller logos to deal with.
But this made me fall in love with logo design. And we're looking at some of the most fun logo designs that there ever has been. Right?
This is all like later stage, like Fourth World and on Kirby. This isn't even classic Marvel Kirby, except for a bit of Thor.
No, yeah.
I snuck this in.
And
I snuck in this story.
Because since I did Female Furies, I'm like, let's look at these ones.
Yeah, so we talked a bit before, and we're like, what are we talking about? And the Female Furies thing was a great. I want to know more about it.
Yeah.
Also, an excuse to have more Kirby stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I just went to the Kirby exhibit at the Skirball in Los Angeles, and I mean, it's amazing. It's because it sort of walks you through his whole life and his career and all of that, and I found it really interesting, like the way that his style changes, and that, like, when he really gets into like the collaging and stuff.
Did that start here, just at DC?
I feel from what it looked like in the museum, it looked like that's, it was sort of like I don't know if it was specifically with DC, but it was like a certain era in his life he started becoming interested in that. And one thing that I found when I was reading the Fourth World stuff in preparation for Female Furies was that, like, Kirby was really interested in science and technology and, sort of space science and, like the real stuff. And I think that, like, the collaging really kind of showed this sort of layering of the real world and the comic book world that he was kind of trying to do with his big, ideas.
I think one of the things that makes him so engaging and interesting and creative, or one of the things that makes him archetypal, is that he takes this interest in science and makes it metaphysical, because there's also an interest in religion.
Yeah.
And you get this, like, all of this stuff just feels to me, even the Marvel stuff, especially like Thor and stuff, feels like just Kirby interpreting religion through fantasy and
oh, sure. But also, like, his crazy curiosity of science. And I think that time period of the 50s and 60s, when, like, everyone in the United States was, like, absolutely freaking out about space travel and the moon landing and all that kind of stuff, I feel like any sci-fi stuff felt very new and fresh, and the possibility that in the future we are going to have flying cars and we are going to go to these places and all this stuff, which is like so different from the attitude we have now, which is like, man, we got a lot of garbage up there that's going really fast, and if you get hit by a piece of garbage flying in space, it's going to go right through you like a bullet, right? Like no one even those kind of like negative aspects to space travel weren't
the reality.
Yeah, like this was like romanticized, and you could see it in the way he like drew like crazy giant ships and tech and computer like walls.
We hadn't even seen our own solar system, when he was writing this. Like we had, we could see through a telescope, but Voyager didn't go until like 77, right? To start exploring, and didn't get to those.
That's
so like
true.
We've actually, as like a human, race, like we haven't been exploring our own, universe for what, like 50 years, 60 years, 70 years, so this is like trying to consider it as like a lot of these like sciences, they're old sciences, but they were new because we were getting newer and newer discoveries. And so he was really playing with that in some way. And he was also playing with the idea of religion, but also with the idea of like, what does it mean to be a good person or a bad person? What does it mean to be a woman? He really tried to, in the best of his abilities, to be as feminist as he could. But even so, that was kind of limited by the times that he was in, and so it's really interesting to like see how progressive he was trying to be in sort of his thought and sort of careful consideration about human nature and the world and stuff like that.
I think that showed with Stan Lee too. Like Stan talked a lot about race and
there
equality,
was a lot of progressive
that kind of stuff. They were very progressive, those guys.
Like, do you have examples? Because I remember I like read a lot of Kirby stuff, and I can think of many times where he's been like where things seemed like like feminist through his lens. But was there stuff that stuck out to you when you were?
Yeah, I can't remember which issue it is, but there's definitely something with the female Furies. I think it's in Mr. Miracle, where it's like all of the Furies, they go to infiltrate this this fortress or something like that, and there are all these like weird, messed up, like misogynist things that the men are saying to the women, and it's very clear that it's unacceptable. Right? The female Furies, they're like attacking a fortress, and like they're like men being untoward, and they it's very clear that it's unacceptable. And it was really fascinating to like see that sort of catcalling being called out by Kirby and being like, this is not cool, and the female Furies sort of punching their way through that. And it wasn't just the main female Furies. It was like, because there are a lot of like women warriors, in that are the other female Furies, not just like the main sort of group. And
I didn't know there were more.
Oh yeah, there's like a whole bunch of.
I guess that makes sense.
A whole bunch of other ladies that like sort of are, they're not the main team, but they're also in there.
Maybe it's in, what's this issue 6? Let's see if in here. The female Furies to me were like, I was always kind of confused because here's a big part in here.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, this is the Funky Flashman issue.
Is that Funky Flashman? That's your favorite?
It's my favorite one where he's ripping on Stan. There's Big Barda. But no, the female Furies were strange to me because when they were introduced, they were like this like super, like basically super team of warriors who were gonna get shit done, and they were like the Hounds of Apocalypse kind of, right?
Yeah, right.
But then like when you actually see them, like they're all just kind of hanging out. they never seem like that bothered about
these are
bringing in big.
So
there they are. Found them.
Also, I thought about this, Carl. What do you think about this, real quick? Where did I see it? Or backup stories. Lots of them.
Yeah, they were
filling
pages of older Kirby stuff.
Cool. That's really cool. I was thinking, for Halloween, we shave our beards and just go as these guys.
That's Scott Free when he's young.
Yeah.
He had to have his head shaved.
But I like how it's just like a gang of them. Yeah, that's so dope. Barda's one of my favorites. She's
Like,
so awesome. She's like
he-
Lady Conan.
He really like lavishes attention on Big Barda.
Oh, yeah.
in these things.
Yeah. But
Um,
she's like Lady Conan without the bang. Like, give her the bangs and she's Conan.
Oh,
Stompa.
Stompa. That's who you say.
Stompa.
Stompa, not Big Bertha. It's Stompa.
Yeah, she stomps
Wicked.
things with her giant
That's awesome.
boots. Mad
Oh
Harriet.
yeah, she's
Oh, right.
so
Yeah.
crazy looking.
I'm so-
Mad Harriet.
I'm so
Lashina,
embarrassed.
Mad Harriet,
Look at this.
Stompa, and who's the one with the
Cool.
big kind of brain?
Just Assad's sister.
Right, which is super cool.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's in here. I just don't know what
Yeah.
her name is. I saw her giant head over here.
They always say. Oh, Mr. Miracle, he's in a trap. Stuck in a trap again. I think I need to get this comic.
Come on.
Anyways,
Give me the goods. Here it
Yeah.
is. A sister of the great Assad. What's her name?
Maybe in this panel.
no.
Gorgeous comics.
Yeah.
Gorgeous comics.
Why doesn't it say her name? It's usually.
Hmm.
Anyway, I can't remember her name.
Anyway. Yeah.
But my impression of the Furies was that like they were. I think they were supposed to bring Big Barda back, right? Like Barda left to go hang out with Scott Free on Earth, and the Furies are usually sent to bring her back. But then they meet up and they just sort of hang out for a long time.
Yeah,
and they never
because-
seem too concerned with her what she's doing.
Well, I mean, they like so in Mr. Miracle #9, which is where I exploded the story out of. It's like there's this the head of the female Furies is actually this woman named Aurelie, and she gets sort of tortured by this guy Himon, and he kind of tortures her, and she runs away to join this cult, right? And then
Was this existing history, or did you
Yeah,
make
no.
this stuff up?
this
That was in
yeah,
Mr.
in Mr. Miracle #9. And so the female Furies go to bring her back into the fold, and then the guy, maybe no, Himon is the guy who like is the cult leader, and then there's like the other guy, and this captain, for Darkseid, like basically makes Aurelie kind of like dance to death. And
Jeez.
like and she dies, and that's sort of Barda's awakening. And when she meets Scott, like he's like, come with me, I can show you a new way, and she escapes. And then the other female Furies are like sent to go bring her back, but then they kind of have an awakening too. And so it's like Kirby had all that stuff like kind of sort of baked into his own thing, that like that think that they kind of, once they get to Earth, they they go swimming, like they do like a lot of
Almost just
lot
hanging
of
out, having
hanging out.
picnics and things.
Yeah, but then because it's like the first time that they're not on a hell planet, and they're like, oh, can kind of relax
Yeah, it seems
here.
like it wouldn't be that hard to convert someone.
Yeah.
Like out of Apocalypse.
Yeah.
You just take them to the beach. You're like, well, you could just live like
You could
that.
just yeah.
Oh, this
just
place
kinda
is so
hang out.
nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Awesome how big that is. Like granny
and I
kids.
think that they were gonna have like a I mean, there's like that famous picture of that Kirby was gonna do a standalone Barda, like female Furies book.
It just never happened.
Oh,
Yeah.
bummer.
Yeah.
That would have been so awesome.
Barda is huge in fandom, though. I mean,
Yeah,
like, there's so
big time.
much. Yeah.
I've done like in the 20 years, I must have done about 10 to 15 Barda commissions for people, for sure. Like I just did another one last year. Like normally once every year, once every 2 years, someone comes up to me for a Barda. Like pretty normal.
Did you ever see scripts for any of that stuff? Like I'm always interested in what Kirby's actual process was for writing. Like a lot of this stuff I think was just in his head. I don't know if he was making notes or like.
I
it
feel
seems
like
he
he
was
probably
writing
just
on
did a lot of stuff on the paper.
That's what
'cause
it
he's
felt
like
like.
just going, right? Like
Yeah.
he's just doing like penciling a book a week.
Like even the
I feel like
covers,
he was probably just like, was there a script?
a lot of this stuff that you're like this text you're reading. I think he's like kind of just scribbling notes on the page.
Probably notes here and there, and then he probably went in and did the dialogue after, like everyone does. But
Mhm.
Well, I feel like there's also like a little bit of crossover too between things. So it's like he's pulling in like different ideas, and sort of like each sort of title has like, this is where I'm going to talk about this, and this is where I'm going to talk about this. You know,
Well, because they came out concurrently, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Miracle, New
I'm
Gods,
sure this
and
is like
Forever
People.
People.
this is
Yeah.
definitely
Like-
well documented.
Yeah.
Like his writing process. This is definitely well documented. Someone in the
If
comments.
it
will,
is,
like,
yeah, like, well, your
throw it
those
up.
Kirby readers probably have.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. We should have got the Kirby readers out.
Yeah.
They're awesome. Yeah, you got to work on a Kirby thing. That's amazing. You haven't, have you?
I got to do a one New Gods cover.
Oh, you just did a New
Yeah.
Gods cover.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I know that Mike Cho and Chip Kidd have a book coming out. It's an Avengers book, but it's got a lot of ode to Kirby in it. That's really cool. There's like this giant vehicle space traveling machine that's like right out of like New Gods
Mm-hmm.
book. That's like unbelievably cool.
Well, I should like mention too that Adriana Mello, who was like the person that I collaborated with on Female Furies, like she really tried to sort of evoke like a Kirby-esque style,
Mhm.
like for our book, so that it kind of like fit in.
It's hard.
Cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
People think
yeah.
it's going to be easy. It's not an easy
Yeah.
thing to do.
No.
And I think like the big challenge was it's like Big Barda is like she's big and you forget how big she should be. You know what I mean? Like, you know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because she's often depicted as sort of.
Would you say she's as big as Colossus?
I kind of bigger.
She's bigger than Colossus?
I just picture her as like oafs, like a kind of a giant, like super tall, like the size of like that headmistress in Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, like that's
Yeah,
kind of
right.
my picture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like Nia's favorite thing. Yeah. That part with the headmistress
Oh,
and
yeah.
Haggard.
Yeah.
Haggard.
Was there? What else was
So
at that?
yeah, she's as big as Hagrid. That's
All right, she's Haggard size.
Except we
yeah.
don't want to talk about
Yeah, Potter.
stupid Potter.
My daughter's like well into it right now. This is one of my favorite Kirby issues because I have the trade and I've had the trade for like I think 2 decades, and it's pretty hippie-ish. But I figure I think I basically almost based my wrestling costume off this guy because this was sitting on my desk for years and years and years and years. It's still probably on my desk now, but I would just look at it so much. I think my whole animal wrestling costume and outfit and persona kind of came from looking at that picture over and over. But I also was in love with his like rat fink 60s like trippy like vehicles. So there was like that whole sort of custom car thing in the 60s that would have been in California that like that rat fink guy was all about, and like they would design cars like this. And so now when I look at them in a Kirby comic, I'm kind of like obsessed with these vehicles because they're so crazy looking. And then out of nowhere, you just have like Superman who like barely fits.
I think it's because like
It's like
they were
Superman
trying
showed up.
they were trying to segue like DC universe into this.
Yeah,
sort of
this isn't
Kirby-
the one where they redrew Superman's face. Oh, it is.
Sure,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah.
I'm pretty sure he's redrawn in here.
Yeah, so he drew Superman, and then did they actually have Kurt Swan himself come in and
I believe so.
redraw the faces?
I think so. Big Bear is the guy's name.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. look at
Also,
this guy.
like the
He's
fact
awesome.
that like Beautiful Dreamer. Well, first of all, it feels always like this group is like they're like a hippie communist.
Yeah, like
you know,
is this
kind of
guy
thing.
not Billy Jack? Have you ever seen those movies? The Billy Jack action movies? He's like a native karate guy. It's really really cool. But yeah, it's got like this is super 60s. Yeah, but this is not Kirby.
No.
This is Kurt Swan, or someone doing Kurt Swan.
Yeah. Yeah, these are like the famously redrawn Kirby Superman faces.
It looks like all of Superman
Like
is
the-
redrawn, like his body too. This is not Kirby. That body. Everything else looks like Kirby.
What other stuff did they have at that exhibit?
Oh yeah.
Were there collages there too? Or
They
was
had
it...
some collages. There were some character designs. There were, you know, sort of. They had, you know, sort of. The you know the idea of new superheroes like the Fantastic Four and how it's like a family, you know, sort of that they were reinventing the superheroes, and then they had like I think it was maybe an X-Men, and they had every single page so that like the public could see what like they had the inks and then they had the colored page, like the comic book page next to
Oh,
it,
awesome.
so you could kind of see
For a whole issue?
yeah, for a whole
Oh,
issue,
wow.
so you could kind of see like what it looked like drawn, and then like what it looked like when it was finished, lettered and colored and stuff.
Was that when you were
and-
living in LA?
No, I just was in LA this last weekend.
And that's what you
I went
did.
to Vegas, and then I went to LA. And I was like, I'm going to the Kirby Museum, see the Kirby exhibit.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and it was just kind of a, sort of a retrospective of, and also I think one of the things that was really fascinating was that I guess there was a theater student from, like, I want to say UCLA or USC, who had like written to Marvel Comics and like asked if there was like maybe an artist that could help them design some cool costumes for their Julius Caesar production.
Okay.
And Kirby
Volunteer?
yeah, Kirby was the one who did it.
Oh
and
my
so
God.
they had like one of the costumes that was made based on his drawings of, like,
The
Oh.
actual costumes?
Yeah.
What did it look like?
it looked like Big Barda. In
Oh,
a way. Like I was just
wow.
like, oh, is that Big Barda? And it was like, no, it was like Calpurnia from, Julius Caesar or
gosh.
something.
Oh,
It
that's
was
awesome.
Really,
That
it was
is so
really
cool.
amazing. And so they, and then they had, about like the influence on, fashion, influence on, creativity, and like Kirby's sort of the look, and how that inspired, other people and stuff. So
Well, I would argue he's like the most inspirational creator.
yeah, and they also
Yeah.
talked about his war, and like, because I think that's like a really big part of Kirby as well, is like his experiences in World War II, and how that, that shaped him, and his sort of career before the war, and then after the war, and moving to California. And I think that was that was a big thing, like Captain America being sort of directly in response to, Nazis and
Yeah, right.
him being against Nazis,
Mhm.
and even before he went to the war, I think that was like a part of like his thing. So yeah, I mean, it was a really interesting exhibit. And I think that, like, my friend who came with me, who doesn't read comics at all and doesn't know who Kirby is and like doesn't care, she was like, wow, this was really fascinating. Like, I didn't, like, she's never even seen like a single Marvel movie, or a comic book
Yeah,
movie.
right.
So for her, she was just like, all right, I'll go, because Diane Furstenberg exhibit is here as well, and we can go look at the dresses. But she found it really fascinating.
Yeah, that's great. I'm sure Cho would have killed to go there.
I would have loved to.
Yeah,
have seen
me
that.
too.
Well, it's there until I think March of 26. So
Oh,
you've got
Oh,
we can just jet
yeah.
off
We need
to,
to
LA.
find a weekend to go to that.
We need to be invited to LA for something.
Yeah. What can we find?
I don't know.
I'll
If anyone's
start
out there.
hunting. Okay, Comic Hunter. Here we go.
All right, let's go hunting.
I found it.
What'd you find?
I found it.
Invisible.
I only have Gray Hulk left. See this? I have 2 missing in the whole series. This one and Gray Hulk. And I'm gonna rebuy Thor because I glued my Thor's cape on and now his arms don't move. My daughter and I have this whole set except for Gray Hulk. He's all that's missing. How about that? Boom!
When you're working on, so you're working on Female Furies, how conscious are you of trying to capture like I don't even know what it is. There's like an ineffable Kirbiness to the way he tells stories, the way just the ideas. Like, do you try to capture that at all, or do you just take the characters and run with it?
you can't. I think you have to do your own thing, especially if you're doing something that's, sort of out of continuity. It's like, you take it, you use the, for me, it was Mr. Miracle #9. That was like where I sprung everything from. But like, it's like I used Lump in in there, and I used parts of the stuff from like Scott, Scott Free and Orion like being like swapped, and like and Hegra, and like all these other aspects. Beautiful Dreamer is like a really important part, because Beautiful Dreamer is like one of the most powerful people, like who's actually, I mean, it seems like is kind of like equal, or could take down Darkseid, and so and also pulling Beautiful Dreamer in, because she was another woman, and I was really trying to like have like sort of different kinds of women in the book. So but I had to come up with like my own sort of idea about what that hell place is, like what Apocalypse is, and what the relationship between Darkseid and Granny Goodness was, and my you just kind of have to go with your own thing. My pitch was, it's the Me Too movement on Apocalypse. So it's like, what would happen if you're the female Furies, and Barda has an awakening to what's actually going on, and the sort of coercive power that's being sort of held over her and her fellow women. And once you awaken to that you can't accept that anymore. And so you kind of have to go your own way when you're sort of trying to break and crack something, but also go from the same sort of big ideas, right? Like, so
Well, there's like a cosmic element to it that you can't really ignore.
Yeah.
Actually, Kirby does ignore it often
yeah
in the pages of New Gods. We're just in New York.
yeah
But like to its detriment.
What do you think about like the sort of like the what I noticed is like a trend to be like completely submersive when new writer gets onto like a book. Like a lot of times when I find when a new writer comes into like a book nowadays, their idea is like, oh, we're gonna destroy everything, and then I'm gonna make it like this now.
right
Whereas like I think part of the appeal for me to get into, let's say, a Batman book was, can you just tell me like a really great detective story?
Yeah.
Can you tell me like a whodunit with Batman? Because that's like the best Batman is when he's being a detective story. You don't have to like destroy it and give me now he's got 8,000 family members and like all this stuff. I don't think, like, every time I read something, it feels like that writer needs to come in and break all the toys from everyone before and then start again. And I feel like that's not always awesome.
Yeah, I'm not that kind of writer. Like, it's like when I was doing Batgirl, like I read every single Batgirl, that I possibly could, like so many Batgirls, because I was trying to really understand, who the core character was and what I could do with it, with the limitations and parameters that I was given. What I have to say, honestly, is that like, if you're allowed to go in and completely, break something and like start it and put your own thing on it, then that's
an editorial problem.
That's great. That's good for you, as a writer.
Sure.
That you get to do that like you have that kind of authority to be able to do that they've given you that tool, that sandbox to play in, but that's not always the case. Like, are you doing something that's like a reinvention, like when like with this Female Furies, it was very much like I read everything, even though I can't remember some of the things that I read or the names of the characters, but like, you read everything and then you pull on all these ideas that are going to support the story that you want to tell.
Right.
So for me, it was like, what's going to help tell this story about Barda, who awakens to this injustice that's happening in her life, and her meeting of Scott, which happens in issue 9. And so when you read, if you get the trade collection of Female Furies that me and Adriana did, I asked them if they could put issue number 9 of Mr. Miracle in the back so that you could read it, because really there's so much that it's like I was just pulling from all of these things. But then I was interested in the other women, like Beautiful Dreamer and Hegra and Tigra and Granny Goodness and all of the women that were in that world too, and how they dealt with trying to accumulate their own power in a world where they were given no power because of the patriarchy.
Right.
And so So for me, it was important to kind of like, be able to like pull from like all of the things that Kirby had set up to kind of show like it's kind of like shaking a story and letting the the feminism kind of
Well, it's
separate out.
whatever. I mean, you read something and there's always like one kernel of something that
Yeah.
resonates with you personally.
Yeah.
And then you just
Yeah,
it wasn't-
explode that out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was Hegra Darkseid's wife?
Yeah.
What
yeah.
did he ever killed? He had his mother killed.
Yeah.
Didn't he? Like
And
he was like a massive
If I
bastard.
remember correctly, he put her in a jail. In
Or
like
something.
yeah, she's like in jail, like kind of like kept alive in this prison,
Mhm.
sort of underground and stuff like that.
Well, he like I the reason I love the New Gods stuff so much from a story point is that it's like it's Shakespearean.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, like the whole like the
I think-
dark side basically fathers a child, gives it away. Like the entire swapping of children between these two families is positively Shakespearean, and like the
Yeah.
linchpin for me of the entire thing. Like without that, you don't have a story. And like the way he treated his mother and his wife. I think there were two women.
There were two, and there he kills one,
This guy's so
one,
awesome.
and then there's the other one that he marries, and then there's something happens. He
Gives
puts
away
her,
her kid.
gives her away a kid, and then puts her in the basement, and so yeah. See, here's like there's like all these
I love these.
Oh, this guy's so awesome.
Lump is
Lump is crazy.
Oh, there she is. What's her name?
Does he say it? Oh, someone in the comment section is gonna know
I want to
exactly
say
who
it's
she
like
is.
Bernadette.
Yes, I
Bernadette.
think you're right.
Yeah.
Oh, thank
Redeemed.
God, I'm
Redeemed.
redeemed.
Yeah, Bernadette. So good. What a great name.
Right,
Oh,
and then
gosh.
Stampa. I was like, Big Bertha? No, that's Big Barda, not Big Barda. That's Stampa.
Yeah.
And
I want
that
to see. I
area,
want to see
and that's the
Thor.
core. That's the core group, and
I
then
wanna
there's
see
other ones.
Thor and Big Barda in a story together.
See, like this lady.
Mm.
Thor and Big Barda in a story together would be amazing.
I think back to what we were talking about, like, like in terms of like subverting like expectations and characters. But like, I feel like if I'm hired, which I have been now a little bit, like to write an existing licensed thing, I feel a responsibility to serve what it is. Like,
Yeah.
and the fan base.
Like when
I
you were
mean,
doing
like,
Batman, you were
yeah,
definitely
Batman
like,
or whatever. Like it's
yeah.
there's a certain like not that a break.
You weren't trying to. Yeah, it wasn't like you were trying to shatter his character
No,
and like
you're trying to.
all of a sudden now Batman is just like a total dick billionaire. Like you weren't trying to do that stuff.
You're always just
Like-
trying to do the best job you can of giving people the thing they love, but highlighting the part of it that resonates with you.
Yeah,
You know,
like
this is what I love about this.
yeah.
Let's.
And we
try to
all
do a
have things
story
we
with
love
it.
about those things.
Mhm.
But I just think, obviously, to a point, all of comics through the 50s, 60s, 70s, into the 80s, if you were working on these things, they were probably like, you as a writer, you probably had to stay in your lane.
Mhm.
As far as what the characters were and the stories were going to be, you probably had to stay in your lane a little bit because, this is what Batman does and this is what Superman does. And it actually reminds me of like the evolution of art. Art, right? Every movement in art, every stylistic movement in art used to take hundreds of years. It would be like 400 years for this style, and then they would do something a little bit different, and then it was there for 200 years. And then around like 1900, like maybe let's say like 1860, 1870, right? Then it just became, let me be the first person to do this style of painting. Let me do let's do Dada, let's do surrealism, let's do impressionism, expressionism. And it just feels like there was like an explosion of a million different styles. And it feels like that's what people are doing a little bit now in the writing. They have to like explode it out to make it something that it completely isn't.
But you have
That's just a feeling I get.
right. But you also have to remember that, like, for example, like, I wanted to do female Furies from a woman's perspective, which hadn't gotten a chance to like.
But that makes sense.
And so
Yeah.
then, or like when I did Shade the Changing Girl, it's like, how do you do that? How do you occupy that space in a new way? And so I think sometimes it's actually really essential, depending on who the writer or creators are, to explode it out with a new point of view if we're changing certain things. You know, if you're changing the gender, if you're changing,
Oh, sure.
you know, if it's a person of color that's like, you know, doing it, like then it's going to have like a different
Context is
different
completely
context is
different.
completely
Yeah, I'm not
different.
even I'm not even
And
talking
so-
about that
No,
stuff.
no,
I'm
I
talking
know.
about
No, but
literally
I'm
like
just-
the normal
Right.
people coming into the
Right.
scenarios are just exploding out every story.
Right, but I'm just giving that as like a
Yeah.
sort of a different
And
context
I'm not
for like
calling
why.
I'm not calling those things bad.
No,
I'm just saying
no, I know. I'm just saying that like sometimes it's like
style. Yeah.
maybe those kinds of like complete you know, explosion of things could be, even if it's not a woman or anybody else, like, you know, who's marginalized, but like, you know, that it's just to make it more of the time. Maybe there's something from the original that is like stuck in the past, and the only way to kind of reinvent it is to explode it out, you know,
Maybe.
is to explode it out.
Could be.
You know,
I feel like Marvel's always been championing progressive ideas
mhm.
and equality. Like Stan Lee, Kirby, I feel like they were always sort of the champion of the little guy. And like that's the way Marvel feels. Like the X-Men feel like it's a story about racism, right? So Marvel always kind of felt like that. So to like be adding, you know, pieces of the Me Too and these kind of things, it just kind of makes sense
Yeah.
for Marvel.
It's not
I'm not
DC.
talking about
Keep that stuff out.
no, I'm not. I'm
No,
not talking
but-
about that at all. I'm talking about just like taking the parts of that character that made that character and those stories a thing, and just like blowing it up into like this new thing. And obviously, it's working with the Absolute series because people love it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
obviously, it works to an extent. I just find that that's weird in times because I'm like, why don't we just make like a news story with those cool ideas? Like
I think in
You
that
know?
case that's what they did. Like
Yeah.
there's still ongoing existing regular
Yeah.
legacy titles. I guess that's what they call them.
And I don't feel strongly either way about these things. I just notice trends, and I'm like,
yeah, I mean,
I'm not putting like, oh, this is terrible. Like, oh, it's cool. Like,
I mean, I don't know.
but at the same time, I just notice the subversion and everything, even in film and TV.
yeah.
It feels like everything is like everyone's writing to be subversive.
But I think the thing is that it's like when you have characters like this, it's kind of like Shakespeare, right?
Right.
And it's kind of like your, you know, mythologies, right? You know, where it's like, these are stories that we know so well that it's a shorthand for the public to be able to understand. So everybody knows Batman or, you know,
Yeah.
whatever character. And so when you mess with it, then everybody still feels safe because they know what that character is. It's harder when it's like a completely new character because they're like, well, I don't know why I should think this is different or, you know, whatever. And so I think that is what's helpful about iconic characters is that we can play with them so well. Like we can play with, you know, Romeo and Juliet and set it in, you know, crack it and, you know, fractured fairy tale it or
Oh
whatever.
yeah.
And we're always gonna feel safe as you know, readers or watchers of those stories because we know we're in on the joke. We know
Yeah, right.
we know what's being done differently.
Yeah.
And so we can either enjoy it or not enjoy it. And I think that, you know, as there are so many kinds of stories, you know, like, you know, it's not just books, movies, you know, television, plays, musicals,
How do
video
you
games,
feel that?
you know, VR, like world immersive
Yeah.
experiences, you know, it's like, how do we find new ways to tell that story? And I think a way to like update some things that may be of concern now that weren't in the past, or to give, you know, even if Stan and Kirby were, you know, progressive in their time, they were still men of their time.
Oh yeah, of course.
And so, you know, now hopefully we've evolved. And so, so now there can be new sort of ideas that are like, you know, in those sort of gutter
Oh
spaces
yeah,
of
totally.
the stories and the voices.
Yeah,
that
and that's
weren't
how that
there.
grows.
Yeah.
It is a good foundation for that sort of story. I mean, to your point, like these concepts are so tried and true that you can't break them.
You can't break them.
So
Yeah.
so
Okay.
Even if
you
you
can
break
throw
them.
anything at them and
Yeah.
they're not going to.
I just feel like when I work on my own stuff, like when we're writing our stuff for Lethal, we're writing new stuff, I just feel like completely free
Mhm.
because you're like there are no expectations. But like you said, right? If I'm gonna write Batman and I'm gonna do it all my way, you're literally going, these people are gonna hate it and these people are gonna love it, and now there's this thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, like when I
Right?
did
And-
Female Furies, I mean,
Yeah.
like, you know, I got a lot of, you know, death threats and
Oh my
you know,
Not
rape
actual death
threat. Yeah, and yeah, I had somebody who said that they were going to come to my signing at Comic-Con and that they were going to hurt me, you know, and I
Oh,
had to,
Jesus.
you know, I mean, like I
It's
got a lot of, it was very traumatic,
Scary.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's scary.
and
Yeah.
you know, and saying like, you know that like Kirby would have hated it, and you know was rolling in his grave, and you know that's why I asked to put issue number 9 in the back of the trade, because I was like, no, look, see,
Yeah.
it's I'm basically telling the exact same story that Kirby did. I'm just shifting the focus and pulling stuff that he sort of, you know, he sort of implied, you know, like one thing that people were angry about was that I implied that you know, that Darkseid and Granny Goodness had sort of a fraught you know, intimate relationship.
Mhm.
And my theory was that, you know, Darkseid knew that Granny was probably more powerful than him in certain ways, and that he kept her close and he kept his thumb on her, you know, and that she, you know, she kept her status and her place in her proximity to him, you know, that's how she kept her power. And I have this one scene in the book where you know, it's like there was this big feast and all this stuff happens and everybody's out, like everybody gets kicked out except for Granny Goodness, and then Darkseid puts his head in her lap and she like strokes his head, and it's like I thought that that was like a real powerful way to understand their sort of like strange, you know, relationship, and the reason that the sort of toxic relationship that they have, and the way that he keeps her in check and the way that she keeps her power, you
Mhm.
know.
Yeah, that's cool.
And that
You
was
know.
Yeah, that's super cool.
And,
That's
you
like
know,
that's objectionable to people.
yeah, you know, or yeah, because you know, people, they, you know, their relationship would never be like that. You don't know what you're talking about. You know, and but there's a lot of things actually in Kirby's work that implies these, like you said, like Shakespearean, you know, operatic kind of, relationships. And you know, you certainly can't be thinking about new mythologies and new gods. I mean, you know, when you read Greek mythology or you know Norse mythology or any mythology, it's like the most fucked up,
Mhm.
you know.
Oh,
like,
Zeus is
ever.
a nightmare.
He's a
Yeah, Zeus is a nightmare.
He's a
Yeah,
bitch, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, so it's like, you know, it's
Zeus is
very,
gnarly.
very
Yeah.
complex. And so, you know, and I think that's the thing that these iconic characters can do, is that you can really sort of delve into the human condition. And you know, the some stories from the past don't play so well today, because you're like, well, okay, that doesn't really, you know, ring true anymore. But there still have these like core human things that can,
Mhm.
you know,
I think that's
resonate.
like, I like the use of the word operatic, because I think that's that's how Kirby makes this work.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
when these characters are allowed to be larger than life
Yeah.
and have big emotions or crazy reactions to things, that's what the new god, like what they're gods.
Yeah.
You know, that's how it should feel to me. And when you start making them more subtly human, I feel like it doesn't ring.
Although the female Furies and Barda at the beach
Yeah,
Yeah,
true,
kind
true.
of does, like, it is
Yeah, yeah.
kind of nice to kind of see these like gods in their sort of like you know, sort of like casual moments, you
Mhm.
know what I mean? Because it sort of heightens the sort of difference, you know. I mean, like,
I believe in that.
Zeus like always hiding himself to like be like, I'm a normal person.
Yeah,
you
right.
know,
Disguised
like,
as a
yeah,
goat
yeah,
today.
exactly.
But I always love that in stories, and those are like the part of the story that I love a lot, is when those human things are injected into the story, like Twin Peaks. You have the double R diner, you have the coffee, you have the cherry pie,
Right.
like all the things that we all
Right.
do and ingest, and like, you know, a day at the beach for relaxation. Those are all the things that are like really like we've all experienced, so we all know those things and
Yeah.
can experience those things. So
But
I always
it's
like talking
it's
about
such a-
food and
it's such
like
a heightened
comics or-
reality the way it's presented there too. The same way that like Kubrick will like heighten the shit out of everything, like people's performances, like in The Shining and stuff like that.
Yeah.
None of it's actually human.
Yeah.
It's like it's larger than life stage acting. You know what I mean? deliberately. And Twin Peaks is like that too. Like no one like reacts that way to a cup of coffee or a piece of
Yeah, no, but that like the fact that they do makes us like
yeah.
really excited that
Yeah, yeah.
someone would freak out that hard over a cup of coffee.
Right.
Right?
Well,
Like you get excited by that.
and
Like it's
that, I remember a writing teacher saying to me, there's only three stories. There's stories about war, there's stories about love, and there's stories about riches. And it can be in any combination, right? So it can be like war of countries, war of worlds, war of people, war of, neighborhoods, war of, like man and wife, or,
man
sister and
versus
sister.
nature.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or love,
Cool.
love of nature, love of the universe, love of another person, love, right? Riches, like richness of soul, heart, religion, like faith, like whatever, right? Those are the only three stories that they are.
Interesting.
And that, you do
Oh,
them
that's cool.
in like the small scale or the big scale. And that
Yeah.
they're, it's like, what is this story about? Is it about love? Is it about war? Is it about riches, richness of soul, riches of, whatever. And I think that that's really important too, because like when you think about it, reimagining whatever stories, there's three stories.
Yeah, right.
There's three stories, and we're just infinitely, sort of
Yeah,
trying
and then
to
there's also
tell
like
them.
there's also like like formats to like the way stories are told, and when the format like let's say the hero's journey.
Yeah.
When I'm watching like a film, if something deviates hard from the hero's journey, I feel like a cat who's been petted the wrong way. Like all of a sudden I'm like just what? Like this doesn't fit the compute, right?
Right.
It must be bad, like.
But there's so many other kinds of stories too.
Oh, yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
like-
I remember
like
reading up in that, like it was like, okay, there's the hero's journey, but that's very male centered, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
what
yeah,
about
yeah.
the heroine's journey, and like
Oh yeah.
how women's stories like tend to be different, or Eastern stories versus Western stories, like all of these kinds of things, and yeah, and so it's very, very interesting, because it's like what you were talking about, Carl. It's really like, what is the one kernel? What is the one thing that's interesting to me today that I want to tell, because
Yeah, right.
it might not be that I want to tell that same story, or, like, sometimes, because I've written novels and I write operas and like whatever. And so it's like, I'll ask a story. Well, what do you want to be? Do you want to be a novel? Do you want to be a comic book? Like, which is the better way to tell it? Or if I'm going to tell it as a novel, it's going to be different than, because you're pulling out different things that are of interest in order to be able to tell that story. So it's like, it's so many different ways to approach.
I had a friend from university that came, and I was trying to explain to him like the difference between work for hire and creator owned. And I always use the analogy, and now I use Taylor Swift so that I'm semi-current. But like work for hire, like you're a session musician in Taylor Swift's band, and you're paid for your time in the studio. And if that is like the number one hit and makes billions of dollars, you were paid for your time in the studio. Thank you, but that's not your song. And like that creator own, man, that's the power of your own song. And like there's a difference, even if the money isn't the same. It's different being your two, and that's magic. I think if you can get that made, which is hard, really hard, and it's really hard to like break even doing it. I did a book with my daughter. So the shortest version of this is like she had made a suicide attempt when she was 15, and I wanted to come up with a story that would inspire her to keep like wanting to live. So it took so long to get made, and a great artist partner, Marco Lorenzana from Mexico, and it took so long to get made and to find a deal, and ultimately we got a deal through an imprint of Image called Cecil. By that time, my daughter was in a better place, so she could co-write it with me, and like that's the most personal thing I've ever done. Like, as much as I love Star Wars and Silver Surfer or other stuff I've done, it's like this is something where it's more of myself in it than I could ever do in something else.
Do you write differently? I don't mean like obviously for different formats you would, but how do you shift gears in your head between different things like that? Because I imagine you're in a different space for not just for each idea, but for each medium. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know. I think the first thing that I usually do is I ask a story what it wants to be. And if I feel like it's going to be best told as that, then that's what I do. Like, I recently had a book canceled, and the notes that I got back were, it didn't move forward. And the notes that I got, even though I had conceived of it as a comic book, their note was, we think this is a novel. It's like, but I don't think it's a novel.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like, I
Yeah.
thought it was a comic book.
Yeah,
and I
right.
wrote it as a comic book. And so I find it strange that you think it's a novel. And that definitely makes me think of it, because it's like, oh, well, if it were a novel, I would write it in this totally different way. Like, it would probably have a different, point of view. It would have a different, because in comics, obviously you can have silence in a way that you can't have in a book. Even if you say in a book, oh, it was very quiet, it was such a quiet day, you could hear nothing but the wind and blah, blah, blah. It's very loud, it's so talky,
Mhm.
whereas like in a comic, it's like, you want some silence, boom, it's just right there, splash, look,
Mhm.
delve in. And that's a very, very different reading experience than sort of the cluttered things. And obviously you can have inner thoughts and captions and stuff like that in comics, but in a novel, you can like describe the way somebody walks across the room, and the reader can really sort of like picture that in their head. It's very, very different. And then in an opera, like I had this one opera, Les Aventures de Madame Merveille, which had like, it was about comics. And so one of them was like a librarian who gets split from her superhero self, and so she's jealous of her own self. And I wrote this whole aria about like, why do they all love her, and this and that and the other thing, and blah 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 blah. And then at the end of the day, like when I came back with the composer, it was just like, why do they all love her? Why? And that was the same thing. Gee, and that's very different. It's very emotional, and you don't need any more words. You don't need to describe how she's feeling, really. It's like, why?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
very operatic thing.
Mm.
So yeah, it does. It completely changes every time you're looking at a new thing. And if I were to write something as a play one day, I'd like to be a playwright, that would, I'm sure, be completely different as well, because then you're looking at what is the stage picture, what is the sort of emotional core, that's very dramatic and theatrical and sort of metaphorical in a way that you can't do in a book, and that you can't do in a and then if you do a movie, then there's sound, and it's very different.
Mhm. Interesting.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I had other questions.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get into it now, but something you said before reminded me that I was a huge fan of Shade the Changing Man.
Oh.
Oh
And I
yeah.
forgot that you did Shade the
Yeah.
Changing Girl.
Yeah.
I would kind of love to talk about that at some point
Yeah.
too. I still think about some of Becky's covers for those.
Oh
Oh,
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah.
amazing covers.
Amazing cover.
I've had a few commissions on that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, people
I've
have
never
asked me to
done
draw
The
that.
that.
Shade,
Yeah.
the
yeah.
girl or the man?
Both.
Oh.
Yeah. Both. I think I've had 3. Actually, the last 2 that I did, I don't think they were all girls.
Marley and I did.
Yeah.
We just did in DC versus Vampires. We did a 2 little backup, like a 2-parter backup story with Shade and River and Teacup and Shade the Changing Man. And so that was really fun to kind of revisit and rework with Marley on that. But that was the same thing. Like, I read every single Shade the Changing Man, the Ditko version and the Milligan. And then pulled what I liked, and I sort of felt like Milligan had really done like a he sort of with Shade the Changing Man, he used the geography of darkness and of the soul, of darkness of the heart, darkness of the heart. And so I thought, well, okay, that's Milligan's landscape. And so I'm going to do with Shade the Changing Girl, I'm going to do the landscape of the heart and emotions and, and sort of lightness, so that there would be a light and dark, and and pulled in things from Ditko's version and whatever, and they're all in Shade the Changing Girl. So if you read the Ditko or if you read the Milligan, you'd be like, oh, I understand what that is and what that is referencing. But it was very much our own thing as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of doing homework, even if you can't remember things on that.
I gotta go reread.
When you're doing,
No, I think
when
that's
you're-
super
yeah,
important
like
when you
you're
take
doing-
something like that
yeah,
on.
when
You should
you're
know
doing
it.
the
Yeah.
thing, I mean, it's like, even like when I did Batgirl, I got given Jason Bard as Batgirl's boyfriend or love interest because Dick Grayson had gotten shot in the head, and so he was Rick Grayson and couldn't remember anything. And so, but there was the problem that Jason Bard had recently, she had tried to throw him off a building, Batgirl, and like, all this stuff. They did not like each other. And so, but going back to reading the original Batgirls, like when it first came out, it was like Jason Bard was actually the best boyfriend she ever had. He was awesome, and he was a Vietnam War vet, and he was like completely supportive and like a feminist man and like all this stuff. And so being sort of assigned Jason Bard to be her love interest, when it was like, what the hell am I going to do with this? Like she just tried to throw him off a roof, and she hates him, and he hates her, Batgirl, and like whatever. It was like I could go back to being like, okay, but I know that in her history, he's the best boyfriend she ever had. And so I can pull something from that into using it in when you're sort of in those shared universe things where you're assigned things like, well, you have to do this because of all these other things that happen.
It's kind of why I like limitations like that.
Yeah.
In when you're working on these sorts of things,
Yeah.
like when we're doing our own stuff, it's nice to use having no limitations. I find crippling. In
I
many
think
ways.
I always need limitations.
Yeah, it
Like
helps a lot.
I
especially if you're
will walk
working on
into
the
like
places.
any mother trucker book I'm gonna write. I know that like 4 things have to happen no matter what.
Yeah.
So how do I
Also,
get there?
the limitations of like a page count, even.
Oh yeah,
You know, or if you're doing like Batgirl or whatever, to know where's the ring?
I
where are
get
the ropes?
scared whenever someone's telling me about their story idea and it's just this like gigantic thing, and every time I'm just like, just bring it down to this. What would happen if it happened in one room?
Human scale.
You know, like,
but
like,
it's really hard sometimes,
of
you
course.
know, because it's
Of
also
course.
like this hard thing of like, when you're pitching stuff, it's like you're like, okay, and I gotta have this and this and the kitchen sink and this and this and this, right? And it's very, very difficult sometimes to just be like, to scale it down. I always feel like I'm so super complicated, and it's like just simplify.
Yeah,
But sometimes it's like, especially when you're doing a pitch, like you gotta like have the the hook and the twist and the this and the that and the bing, bang,
knowing that
boom,
like 40% of that's actually going to make it.
Exactly, and like, and I think that does sort of like it's this kind of thing where it's like, in order to get to do the thing, you have to go big, but actually when to actually really accomplish something that like really hits, and really lands on the reader or on the audience, is to kind of keep it small and tight and simple.
Yeah, I always like some sort of grounding point.
Yeah.
Like I feel like there needs to be at least a setting, or
Yeah.
there needs to be some sort of grounding point to like a story.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it just gets to be all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's when I feel like I'm lost in the woods. Like, I love the new Superman movie, but at the end of the movie, I did feel like there's a lot of business. Like,
yeah, I mean, I liked it too. I
Yeah.
liked it a lot, and I loved the way that like it just kind of threw you into like the story.
That
and
was-
stuff like
that was amazing.
I thought
Yeah.
everybody was like spot on, like they were all
yeah.
great. But I wished in a way that there were 2 less characters so that I could like really be weeping openly.
Oh, yeah,
Or one less plot.
like,
Yeah,
like,
just
can we
like-
get rid of the
like-
black hole
just
business
like-
that's ripping the city open
just
and focus
one-
on the war?
Yeah, just
Or
give
can we
me-
get rid of the
yeah.
war and focus on the
One
ripping
thing.
of the city?
Yeah, but
Like-
and that said, it's like I was like, oh, every actor is great, but
It was
like,
totally
but,
they nailed
but
it.
like,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
like, I want to
Acting was great.
I want to care more about the baby. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, I want to know more
Right,
about
yeah.
the baby.
No time
you
to
know?
care about that baby.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no time to care about that baby, but I want to care. I want to be
Yeah.
crying about that baby. I
Yeah,
want to be
right.
so happy when, like, you see the
gets saved,
three of
yeah.
them, like
Yeah.
him and his girlfriend and the baby are, like waving, like or Hot Girl. I felt like Hot Girl. I'm like, what? I need,
Oh, she got nothing.
I want
She's
more
got nothing.
Hot Girl,
Yeah.
like so
Also, like, just a side note, like, Guy Gardner, like, I was like, wow, like the whole movie, I was just like short circuiting because I was like, why is your hair blonde?
Well,
I was like, why isn't it red? Was it blonde
was
before?
it not red in the movie?
No, it's blonde. And the whole time I'm like, I want to just go in with a paintbrush and
So you're,
paint
like,
his hair
distracted.
orange. Yeah, I got
but
I got very distracted by that. Yeah,
loved Lois Lane, and I thought
she was amazing.
she was a
Well,
great
I
Lois
think
Lane.
like Miss
And
Maisel's our
when-
favorite show.
And when she was like
up
dictating
there,
like
yeah.
the thing to Jimmy Olsen, like I just thought everybody was fantastic in that movie. But I just wanted to be able to like have a moment where I could be like, oh, this is why
Yeah.
I should be like, everything should be landing, all the feels, you know?
Mhm.
And I felt
Well,
I felt
they
like I
got a
had half
little
the feels.
a little piece
Yeah.
of that when
Yeah.
he's with his parents.
Yeah, a little piece, but then I
For a
would have
client.
liked more.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for-
but then I would have liked more with the parents
Mhm.
too, you know?
Yeah, I think he was just trying to do too much.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think if he had like literally pulled out half of the things a little bit
yeah,
and then focused on that, it would have.
yeah.
Anyway, I don't want to review
But-
Superman here.
No,
We
but
all
I'm
like
just
him,
we're
but-
talking about this story mechanics, like in this
Yeah.
this episode
Yeah,
here, so it's kind of fun.
And I think that like that, you know, obviously, I mean, we could even say that Kirby kind of like gets kind of like over.
Oh, he's a little
over-
lost in the
A
weeds.
little lost
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah.
weeds at
Yeah, for
times
sure.
first, you know, at times too. I mean, like that's just, you know, what happens, and I think especially if you don't know how many issues you're going to get or how you're
Mhm.
you know when your run is going to be over because they've decided that it's over, right? It's like you're just like, okay, like what can I
Yeah.
well,
Well, it's the
keep
same
doing to
problem
tumble
that you just
forward?
described in that, like, you have someone with way too many ideas starting a thing, and the problem always is entry point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Where do I enter the story, and from whose point of view? And once you
was-
know that, and that's different for every medium, as we kind of
Yeah.
I always thought it was weird when I was reading Preacher, and the first story arc of Preacher is so tight and so amazing, and everything that came after just felt like they were like, "Can you just do more because it's so successful?" And he's like, "Well, I kind of don't really have many more ideas." Like it kind of felt like as we went on, it was just like this doesn't seem like very coherent or.
It's a lot of
or
mangas like
tight,
that,
yeah.
so
Whereas
it just
like that
runs on.
first part, I was just like riveted every issue, and then it gets to a point where you're just like, oh, I feel like this should have ended. Like it feels over.
but you know, I think it's really hard sometimes to um have the you know the you know, it's very hard to like just say, okay, well, I'm done and I'm gonna walk away and I'm not gonna
Oh, yeah,
I'm not
of
gonna do
course.
it, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know, no matter what timeline you're in, like, you know, like no matter if it's the 1930s or if it's now, it's like, you know, I'd like to eat, you know, so
Yeah,
it's
of
like
course.
to
Yes, of
keep
course.
going, you
Yeah.
know. But I do think like when Marley and I were doing Shade the Changing Woman, we had the story for, you know, sort of for 12 issues is what we thought. And they couldn't guarantee us. They said, well, we'll see how, you know, after the third issue, we'll see whether or not it's going well. And then we'll either renew it or we'll end at 6. And Marley and I had a conversation and we said, you know what? If they can only guarantee us 6, let's just end it at 6. Let's not try and hope that it will be longer. And that was a very rare moment where we could do that because they weren't sure what was happening with Young Animal or whatever. And so, and I feel really happy about that because otherwise I think we would have kept introducing new things that then never would have been
Resolved.
resolved. And sure,
there's
like
nothing
that
worse than
last
that.
issue,
Yeah.
it's like I wish that I could have had a double issue to like just kind of give the space that it actually needed. But I feel really proud that like we got to like sort of end it and walk away, you know, and
That's always a win right
Yeah,
there. I mean, I have a series
absolutely.
though, like in the third trade, it just the whole thing just didn't continue.
Yeah.
So it's like this open-ended thing that
Yeah.
never finished, and it's like it really burns a hole in your ass
yeah,
for the rest of your
Yeah.
career. You're like, "Ugh, if we just
Yeah.
finish the damn thing.
yeah, you know, but yeah, I mean, these are quality problems to have sometimes,
Yes.
you know. Like,
Yeah.
but
For sure.
you know, because that's the thing is that stories do continue and somebody can then maybe take that up later, pick up that thread.
Oh
later,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
It's like at
That,
the
that can
end of
always
Shade of
happen.
Changing
Yeah,
Room,
you can always continue. Yeah.
right? There's a new shade, and so
Yeah.
it's like somebody else could, you know, we left it like that so that somebody in the future could be like, oh, I'm gonna do Shade the Changing
Yeah.
as this character now, you know, and
Sure.
and that it kind of like has a gift to give somebody else, you know, because I think that's what comics is all about, is constantly that constant reinvention and that constantly revisiting and evolution of those characters.
Yeah.
I think that's a good spot to end.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Cecil, right
It
on.
was great to finally
yeah.
get you here.
Yeah, thank you.
Terrat is an experiment gone wrong, and he's just out for vengeance. Terrat came about through a problem I had with an uninvited guest in my home, and no matter what I did, I could not catch it. So I'm watching this thing. I was up late at night watching this thing just run through my house, and the word terror came to my brain. So I combined the words terror and rat, and that's how the character was born.